everyone, this is Steve Wise with 3Cloud. And if you're like me, you've probably run into some hurdles before when you try to generate your own time and date in Power BI. So I wanted to create a demonstration file that shows the differences of when we generate time and date in Power BI Desktop and in the service. And so the main takeaways from this are really that when we operate in Power BI Desktop and we try to generate time and date using the native Power BI tools, it pulls that information from our local machine. When we move that product to Power BI service, generally the service exists in a slightly different server time and date than the local machine. So there's going to be some differences between the times as they appear in the desktop file and then what they appear in the service. So we're going to explore what those differences are. And the third thing is that, at least right now, currently, there's no native functionality in Power BI to handle daylight saving time changes. So when you start to generate your own time and dates, you have to create tools to take that into account. So here's the demonstration file I've put together. What I've done is I've gone into Power Query and I've actually copied the queries that I've used here to generate time and date. And the first one at the top is using datetimezone.localNow to pull the local time. And this, again, remember, when we're operating in Power BI Desktop, this is pulling information from my local machine. So this information is correct. And what I'm doing is reusing some of these formulas, and we're going to look at how can we switch this time and what do those changes look like as we march down through the queries. So I've taken this and adjusted it in a couple different ways. To show how this changes when we move to Power BI service, rather than publishing this file and jumping into the service and looking at it, I've actually taken the queries that I've used to generate these times, I've put them in the service as a data flow, and then I've imported that data flow into this Power BI desktop file. And so I basically have two pages. One with the blue background is the information from the data flow, and the white background is information generated locally. So we can see side by side what those changes are going to look like. And right off the bat, when we look at the gray box, date time zone local now gives me the correct time when I'm in Power BI desktop. When I pull that exact same query from my data flow, it gives me the wrong time. This is 4 hours ahead. So how do I correct for something that I know is going to be 4 hours ahead when I move it to the service? So one way to do that in the red box is to say, all right, I'm going to take that local now, and I'm just going to bump it back 4 hours using the duration formula. And so when I'm in Power BI Desktop, I can do that, but it gives me the wrong time in Power BI Desktop. When I look at that same query in the service, it gives me the correct time. So what would I want to do? Do I want to see the wrong time in Power BI Desktop and the right time in the service? It can be a little confusing. So a better way to do this is to use date time zone switch zone and to move that into your current time zone. For me, I'm in Eastern Standard Time, and right now we're still in daylight saving, so I'm going to bump that back 4 hours. The difference between these two boxes is whether I've used local now or fixed local now. The differences between those two formulas is minor. One of them is going to return the time at the start of the query execution. The other one is going to return the time at its call. So if you're calling this query multiple times, local now might return slightly different results. Fixed local now will just return the time at the start of the query execution. But for all intents and purposes, they're giving me the same result. And here in Power BI Desktop, it's giving me the correct time. When I move it to the service, it's also giving me the correct time. So this by far is the best solution for generating your own time and date because it's consistent between the desktop file and the service. And so the problem here, though, is that this is great, but what happens when we cross daylight saving and we have to bump back 5 hours instead of 4 hours? And so as I said, there is no native functionality for Power BI to do that. So you either have to source your information from the web somewhere, pull an API, or create a formula in Power Query that looks at the time and the date, understands what are the boundaries of daylight saving, and adjusts the formula to account for that change, whether we're going back 4 hours or 5 hours. And so I've done that here. I think the takeaway from this, though, is to show what changes as we move from Power BI Desktop to the service, and what are the best formulas to use when we're going to generate our own time. And so really what I would say is the takeaway from this is to use switch zone when adjusting from Power BI Desktop to the service. Okay, I hope you enjoyed me for this quick look at generating time. I'll probably come back with another video to look at how I did these daylight saving correction formulas. And in the meantime, thank you so much for joining.